And I want to know who has been to the Venture Center. Who has not? Okay, I know that you guys are here for Anita Davis. Which we are very, very excited about, by the way. First of all, I need to tell you about what the Venture Center does, right? Wait, first of all, you have to get your cell phones out, and you're going to have to check in to the Venture Center, right? You're going to have to do that because social media is important, so we can spread the word about what the Venture Center does. So get your cell phones out, check into the Venture Center, tell them, oh, how excited we are that Anita Davis is here, and then we'll move on. So, while you're doing that, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the Venture Center, and then we're going to move on to, what you guys are really here for, which is Anita Davis. So, the Venture Center is 5 years old. It is what they call the Entrepreneur Services Organization. And what that means is anybody who has a startup, ideas, or early stage companies or entrepreneurs, this is the place they come to when it comes to education, collaboration, and acceleration. We have a lot of workshops here. We have a lot of speaking engagements here. We have like the threefold lady that came here and talked about their concept and talked about their inspiration. We also have the entrepreneurial resources in our city when it comes to small business and AEDC and the Chamber of Commerce and all that stuff. I welcome you guys to please keep coming. I know that you guys are here for Anita, but please keep coming to our organization. We have about 3,000 folks that come through our offices every year that basically go through our programs, listen to our speakers. We're trying to double that this year, so come on back, right? What we're known for is Fintech program. So Fintech is, the birthplace of Fintech really is in Little Rock because of systematics. Who remembers systematics? Right, so that is the world, the birthplace of systematics is right here. And right really in this building. So this is where we started. We run 2 Fintech programs a year. January to March with ICBA, which is Independent Community Banks of America, which represents about 5,000 banks around the country. We get hundreds of applications from around the world, and we only pick 10 companies here, hence the logos that you see in our offices. These cohort today, they came from London, India, Canada, and the rest from the US. So we run 2 programs a year. ICBA is in their 2nd year, and FIS will be the 5th year, starting in June to August. It's about $1 million plus economic impact every time we have something like this in our city. And part of our mission is to try to move those companies here to Little Rock, Arkansas. High-paying jobs, and there's a domino effect when they move here. We have moved 7 companies to Little Rock from around the world, and we try to do that in every one of our Fintech programs, and that is part of the reason why we are business development and economic development for our city. So, but enough about the Venture Center. That is not what you're here for. You're here to hear from Anita. We're so excited that she's here. Our executive director, Wayne Miller, is in Florida. And actually, he's the one that has been really bugging us about getting Anita here for a couple of years now. But he had, last minute, had to go to Florida. But his lovely wife is here, Tony Miller. So, hi, Tony. Just say hello to her back there. Woo! So, she's here to represent. So, let's talk about Anita. So, I'm so excited she's here. She's an inspiration to all of us. She's a friend. And we're going to start by asking Anita, who is Anita Davis, right? Where did you grow up? Talk about your parents, Clarice and Benny Sue.
Clarence.
Ah, Clarence. There you go. And growing up in a small town. So talk to us about who is Anita? Okay. Where did she come from?
Okay, Anita was born in 1946. So it was kind of a heyday for small towns. People were coming back from World War II, I understand. And So there was an awful lot of freedom. Murfreesboro, you may not know, is 1,000 people, and it's in the southwest part of the state between Hot Springs and Texarkana, and we're the only diamond mine in the North American continent. So we also have lakes and trees and beautiful things. But my mother was Betty Sue Anthony, and my dad was Clarence Anthony. I was the only child. They wished for a boy, didn't have it, and mother wanted a little more dainty girl to, and then it just didn't work out that way. But anyway, it was easy to roam around the country. Like a little child could go anywhere you wanted to go, which is just such a freedom. And I remember loving to go out in we lived on the road to where the diamond mine was. So we would go. I would go by myself. And it was fine. And then our town was a square, courthouse in the middle, and we had all kinds of. There was everything you'd ever want: a fabulous drugstore, a couple of dime stores, a drive-in store, 3 grocery stores in a town of 1,000. Mm-hmm. So I'll keep on telling you all that because it sort of imprinted on me. That was kind of a blueprint for South Maine.
So
we jump around.
So do you have any children?
I have 2 children, and I have one daughter who lives in New Orleans, and she has a dog rescue, and she loves New Orleans. It's getting a little bit, either she's getting old or it's getting too crowded for her, so one or the other. But there are lots of dogs in Louisiana that need to be rescued. And then my older daughter lives in Santa Fe, but she has taken a trip, an extended trip for a few months to Rome. She was planning to go to school. She had health issues, so but she has stayed, and she's an artist. So I have 2 interesting young girls. I have no male boys, except for Allie, the woman that works at Esse, has just had 2 little boys, so I have been totally indoctrinated with little boys. I like them.
What about your doggy? Is your doggy also female?
Yeah, I have 2. No.
Oh, I see. You do have boys.
I have a dog. I have one dog that I've had for a long time. If you all know about South Maine, this dog is a little blonde terrier, and she happened to be living behind Bernie's garden. And she lived there by herself. She was wild as a March hare. And some nice woman picked her up and took her to the pet store, Pet Premium. This has been 10 years ago, and was asking for somebody to take care of the dog, and said, I'll help you. And I've had that dog, still have it. It's a girl, she's a blonde. And then I just got another dog whose name is Benji, and he looks just like Benji. He's a boy, he's 8 years old, and he's darling. And he comes to Esse, so if you'd ever like to meet him, I'd like to come.
I asked her to bring the doggy here, she said no. So what brought you to Little Rock?
I was married for 19 years, and then I was divorced. And it's really difficult to live in a small town and be a divorced woman. You get preached at and all kinds of things. And and bringing my girls here felt like the right thing to do. So 7th grade, my younger daughter was in 7th grade. Older daughter went to University of Arkansas first year. So
There was an article in a magazine once, and it said, Anita Davis never set out to rehabilitate part of downtown Little Rock. She wasn't a historic preservationist or one of those people who write letters to local newspapers. She described herself as shy. She simply likes walkable neighborhoods and felt like it was time to go back to the city she called home since the 1980s. So what happened? What about South on Main? What happened there?
Well, 2004, well, in the middle of all that, from the late 80s till 2004, I was lucky enough to get to be in a dream group with Susan Sims Smith, and so I got to be in that kind of environment. And I always have been interested in the earth and loved the earth just from my childhood nature walks and all that. So, but I got a little deeper understanding about that, you know, we need to give back, and I had never really done that. So as time went on, in 2004, my mother passed away, and I needed a space to store some things, which not a high purpose by any means, but I happened to find this building called the Bernice Building, which is at 1417, I think, where Boulevard is now. And I looked up, this woman was taking me around to look at the buildings, and at the top of the building it said the Bernice. Well, my mother's name was Bernice. My grandmother, my maternal grandmother's name was Bernice. So I had to have it. So that was kind of one of the more fateful things, I think, that happened. But I had also been really learning about walkable communities, but I learned that when I was 5, you know. So we had lots, I knew there were a lot of people that lived in that area, but there were very few things for them to go to. You know, you couldn't walk to something. And so it just started happening. Steve Patrick was in that building, and he had his sound studio where Moxie is now. And so I remember, I think I did something with Steve before any of this happened, and I remember you called attention to the fact that I was scared, that there were no people walking up and down the street. You drove there, you got out of your car, you locked your car, and then they locked you into the building. Now, isn't that right? And I mean, that sounded like I was being weird, you know, or scared or something. And but no, that was really the way it was, and that was 2004. So, but I love challenges, and I saw kind of how it could be. And I had been told about, this is a term that real estate people use. There were lots of roofs, you know, house roofs or whatever. And so that meant there were a lot of people that needed something happening in their area. So that's kind of a good sign. And then Steve Patrick decided in 2005 that he thought, oh good, here's an investor and something's going to happen. So he sold me the building not the building, but the lot that's right on the corner. And that's where Little Rock Inn was, a long time ago. And then it was also where the fast food place was. That was a fish place, so Captain D's. Yeah. And it burned. And so that seemed like that could be something landscaped, because I could see that there needed to be as many places that had dirt and green things, so that the storm drains didn't get totally flooded, and it would also make things more beautiful. And so that sort of was a thought in the works. And then in 2006, Crockett, who had a law firm where Green Corner Story is, and Loblolly, wanted to sell, and so I bought that. And so all the time there needed to be things needed to be rehabbed pretty much. And then in 2007, the garden was landscaped, and I used the ecological, I can't remember their name, anyway, somebody that is local. And I think they had worked on Tanner Weeks is one of them. And anyway, they worked on the heifer project. So anyway, the whole idea that I was trying to conceive of was that I felt like to get people out of their houses to come to walk around, you needed art and you needed food. So that was kind of the basis of how all this came about.
Did you look at any other properties outside of downtown, or?
I did. Y'all really get a kick out of one property that I looked at was way out west at close to Target.
No.
Yeah. So the birdies is what made it work.
And then, so you purchased the buildings, so now what's the next thing? How did you get the Boulevard Bread there and the Green Corner Store and Moxie? How did that come about?
I gave really cheap rent. Really cheap rent. And I begged. And I knew that Christina was looking for a bakery place, and she wanted something very cheap, I mean, not economically correct or whatever. And so I needed, because nobody was fighting over the property after 14th. I mean, nobody even knew that anything was happening, and nobody really cared. It seemed like the people that were buying property were not interested. So it was kind of a blank, space that you could purchase. It wasn't inexpensive necessarily. Now, Mary, you can jump in anytime you want to. Mary Bray was right around the corner the whole time. So now Mary has a few places she can go eat.
Yes.
Yes.
It took a long time.
You were actually a resident down there?
And she owns Bray Sheet Metal, which has been a business there for a long time.
Okay. So I'm glad you're there.
I'm glad you're there.
What about the story about Ruth? Did you own that property? The Ruth Cafe?
Oh, yeah.
Well, that was just another progression because we started the Cornbread Festival in 2010, and I can't remember exactly, but I feel like that was kind of when the root, that I bought the root from a woman whose father had died, Lindsay Watson. And so...
Because it was a sweetened cream then.
Yes, it
Do
was.
you guys remember that?
Yes.
And it was not the sweetened cream right then, but it had been many good memories of people that had been there. Lots of good ice cream, that soft serve ice cream, and the steak sandwiches, and the hot dogs. I can't remember all the things, but anyway, it was in rough shape, I will say that. But it was historic, and so it needed love. But there was so much interest from young people that they saw it too, which was exciting. And then there were older people as well. Help me, my friend.
Older people?
Yes, I'm trying to remember what's his name.
Gerald?
Gerald Hound.
Crossroad Green?
Yeah, Gerald Hound had a business that was about the environment, and also they had an incubator which would naturally draw young people to do their first business. So, and then naturally, Shelley Green has always been a green person. Loch Lolly, Sally was watching all this happen the whole time, and she went off to school to learn to do ice cream. So, I mean, it has just been really fun. There's been a lot of things in between, and lots of things that weren't so fun, but it's been an adventure. And it feels like this has been since, let's see, 2004, so this is 16 years. Wow. And that it felt like that was a part of my life from here on that felt like I had purpose and that it was a good fit. And so, if I can encourage anybody to do anything, just go ahead and take a risk. You might fail, you might not, you won't know till you try. And, you can wait till you get old and do it, because you might be a little wiser. And, at least you can, what I think getting older is that you can remember way back, because I can remember way back when I had so much fun walking around by myself, And so that sort of helps to color where you want to go in your life. And of course, some of these other learning experiences are helpful. Travel is helpful, and you can see, how other cities do this. But Bernie's Garden was a place that we had 5 years of sculpture contest, and other people were doing sculptures from other parts of the world, but we majored on Arkansas artists because we have some fabulous art. And so Michael Warwick was somebody from University of Little Rock. He was the head of the sculpture department. And so it is not easy to do that. You have to get folks to sign up, and you have to be in a contest. And then you have to get people to, be the judges of it. And then you have to make sure that it will stay up and people won't ruin it. And so it was it was a learning curve. But it felt like that kind of settled part of the garden. And then we had a young woman who wanted to start a farmer's market. Here we have art and food. And so that was a really nice thing because she had very high standards about what she wanted. She wanted organic food and got the farmers together and all that. Jack was the perfect person to come into the root. And I actually pretty much let him stay there for a few months until he got his feet on the ground. And then he's just flown ever since. So then he got a $175,000 grant, and he was hot to buy that property. And I didn't really want to sell him the property because, it's an investment, and you hold on to investments. But you also don't let people go who are major community people. So we came up with a bargain price. A price. I don't know. I don't think he thought it was such a bargain. But anyway. And then in 2011, John Cook was kind of ready to fold it up, and he didn't need Main Street anymore. He did more internet work, so he moved on to North Little Rock, and I got to buy that building. So that's where Esse is now, and Esse opened. Esse is a purse museum. And there are only 3 purse museums in the world. Yes. And it sort of goes along with this whole thing on South Main, because here was my grandmother who was kind of guiding me. And purses are carried by mothers, women, not necessarily mothers. And the earth is Mother Earth. So here we have and none of the guys were real interested. They were kind of being more interested in this part down here. So it made it a little easier to kind of do the female thing, And now I'm ignoring men because this is not the truth. This is not the whole truth because Joe Fox has been there, for a very long time. And then Mr. Steve LaFrance put in USA Drug at 2007. And then Steve Edwards put a whole lot of money into the grocery store. So we have anchors, and then the women got to do a little bit of their thing.
So there were a couple of things that she said in her, I think, 20-minute speech there. Just kidding.
Sorry.
And thank you for bringing your friends over here,
Yes,
who is
it
your
makes it so easy.
historians, right? So for the entrepreneur in the room, I think it's very encouraging that you basically said you got to do it. When you have a passion, you got to do it. So that was quite interesting. And then you also mentioned the Cornbread Festival, and I kind of want to know. I know that you're the founder of it, and what was your thinking when it comes to your inspiration about why Cornbread Festival?
Okay, in South Arkansas, we ate cornbread with every meal, and we had black-eyed peas and purple whole peas, and you would mash your purple whole peas or your black-eyed peas onto the cornbread, and then you would put green tomato, relish, or something like that. Well, so we're mimicking South Arkansas a little bit, because this is South Little Rock, and it's a culture that is historic. So cornbread is historic, and it just seemed like it would fit. The population in the area that we're in is 30% black, is the way I understand it, and all of us ate cornbread. We all had a history of that back in the day. I'm not saying that we do it now, but that was, so it's introducing another food thing that people, and it's also, you sit around a table and you actually talk to people and eat vegetables together, So you might lose that if you didn't have a cornbread festival.
So there's a lot of firsts that's going on, where on South on Main. Is the Cornbread Festival like one of the only cornbread festival
No,
No. Okay.
No, it's not first. It's there's a big one in Tennessee.
Okay. So South on Main, who named that?
Oh,
And why Soma?
It's actually, it's called Soma. South on Main is a restaurant.
Okay.
Yes, and that was George Wittenberg. He was kind of right in there with, at the very beginning. He was there before I was there, and he has that wonderful building that's right behind, this on, what's the name of that street? Louisiana. And
I like the, the audience participation.
yes. Well, we need it.
We sure do.
He named it.
And what was George's vision on when it comes to Soma?
He had a fabulous idea. It has not come into fruition yet, but he could see a growing garden over that the bridge. And it's such a beautiful idea. We just never had the money, or really the interest of anybody that would want to do that. But I think he needs, all the credit for that. I think that is a great idea.
You mean the bridge over 630?
Yeah.
Oh,
Wouldn't that be pretty?
That would be awesome.
It would be.
So let's talk about the Esse Museum,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
I know your inspiration about it, but how did you start your collection? What's the collection about? Because it is a very impressive, massive collection. Not only about purses, but all the things that are inside the purses depending on the time period. So talk to us a little bit about that.
Well, when I moved here, I have always loved to go to flea markets and antique malls. And moving here as a single woman is really hard if you don't have a particular purpose, passion, whatever, So it gave me an awful lot of time to seek. In little towns, it was the best thing to do. You could go all over the state and you could find the best stuff. And then I had two vagabond girls who traveled, that one lived here and one lived there, and then they'd move. And then it would be fun to go from Little Rock to visit them, and it would take me forever to get from one to the other because there's so many flea markets. And I didn't do any of this on purpose, But it was interesting how, looking back, it was implanted on me about the feminine through Susan Smith. And then, so here I am collecting a container that the feminine carries, you know. So you would think that that would be on purpose, but it wasn't. And I also love to collect things that went in purses, but I wasn't doing that on purpose either. It just happened. So I felt like that it would be interesting for other people to see. So I asked a couple of women from, San Francisco and Seattle to come to Little Rock, and it was hot. It was in my attic. The purses were, and they came, and we put together a traveling exhibit that traveled from, started in Concord, Massachusetts, and it ended up in Seattle. And it went all across the United States, and it was rented, Smith Kramer in Kansas City rented it, and they wanted it again. They had one session, you know, one whole session, and then thank goodness for George Worthen, no, not George Worthen, Bill Worthen, who rented it.
Historians, you need to make sure that.
Yes,
That
the
should be
Historic Arkansas Museum. They rented it, and he said it was the most popular one that he had, and he rented it again. So it gave me an idea that possibly Arkansas could be the first place. So it came back here in 2011, and then it moved into John Cook's Stageworks place.
Now, I have been to Anita's house, and she is one of the most fascinating people I've ever met. And not only does she have an extensive purse and, you know, accessories inside the purse collection, but she's also an artist. So talk to us a little bit about, you know, your art and what other collections you have, because you have a lot.
It's, you know, this is the year of being, the years of being sparse, you know, just everybody's supposed to be sparse. that never worked for me. The art, I have not done my art since I opened Esse. It's sort of taken over my life. I applaud the people that have businesses, because owning property is hard, but it's not as hard as having a business, you know, and having to make sure that you have people that work there, and it's hard. And then nobody really understands why you have a purse museum, you know, it's sort of, and then they forget you're there and all kinds of things. So, but it's fun, it's really fun, and I feel like it is something that helps the city. But there was not been time. I haven't been able to find time to do art. But I have used all those things that I would find at flea markets that made me laugh. I would glue them together, you know, and make these funny things and some are really dark, but you know, anyway. And I don't know what else you asked me.
And what other collections do you have, and is there a thought about doing something with that collection?
Right now, no.
So Esse Museum is expanding. I was over there last week.
Yes.
And there's a lot of things going on there. There's a lot of exhibits happening. So what's the inspiration of that? And let's talk to the audience about what's going on there.
I love talking about this because this is kind of the culmination of what it's just supposed to be happening, it feels like. So I was very careful to keep everything apart. It's almost like, you know, you don't want your peas messed up with your cornbread. You know, I wanted everything to be separate. But for instance, okay, so we have the garden, and we have, what else? And so we have Esse, the Burst Museum, and the backspace now is a space that is about well, we have meditation there at 9 o'clock on Thursday morning. We have a woman coming to talk about dreams. She teaches, her name is Dr. Chelsea Wakefield, and she teaches about dreams. And she also is a couples person. Therapist, thank you. I'm about to run out of words. And that's going to be Monday the 9th, I believe, at 5:30. We've had a judge come and do drumming there. So it's sort of a feminine, way of showing, of experiencing, but men come too. I don't mean that it's just for women. But it's just a way of experiencing different things that are happening here in Little Rock. There's we have a little group that did poetry the other night, and there'll be Crystal Mercer is in charge of this space, and she is having different things happen once a month on Soma After Dark. And she has different speakers, so that will be on our Facebook page. The backspace is called the Esse Center, and the nonprofit that has been built, whatever, organized, is called the Authentic Self. So that's kind of the vein of it. But it's more, we'll also have something called a Wellness Day over at Bernie's Garden. So at the same time, we will have speakers that will be talking about wellness in the backspace. So you kind of get the drift of how this is all kind of helping each other. It's more integrated.
Any goat yoga happening?
No, but we have 3 community yoga things happening at Bernice. No goats.
So, I've always said, we have a lot of visitors here from all over the world, and we take them up to Bentonville to see the Crystal Bridges and the legacy that, Alice Walton has left us and how grateful we are. And I feel like Anita Davis is doing the same thing here in Little Rock, Arkansas, and what kind of gift she's leaving us. So, how wonderful. So the last question I have that I'm going to ask the audience to ask you questions is, what's next? What's next for Anita?
It's this integration.
I'm sorry?
The integration of the entities, because it's just begun, and it's a little more complicated than, just trying to get speakers and things. Sometimes it's trying to work it out.
Gotcha. All right, so let's open it up to the audience. Oh, lots of questions here. Go.
So I've been to the Esse Museum. I've just moved back to Little Rock, but every time I come to visit my family, I go to the First Museum. And the hat and hat pins exhibit is so spectacular. I just felt like I could just camp in those rooms and use. And I'm wondering if those are your hats and you collected those?
Parts of those hats, some of those hats are mine, and some of them were Kathy Nugent's. And so I purchased those from her, but we had a collaborative show exhibit the very first time. So she has an exquisite eye for beautiful things. She sits right there.
Nice.
Just a comment, do you know recommendation to how to make the cornbread taste better? Sir, wilted lettuce.
What?
Wilted lettuce. That's where you put the lettuce and pour the bacon grease over it and wilt it.
Well, your cornbread.
Oh, you can put it in
Make your cornbread better. No,
Have you never had that?
serve it with it.
Oh my God. Burger from Arkansas.
We did greens, not lettuce. Greens with ham hock.
Same thing.
Not lettuce.
Okay, so you're gonna have to bring in your cornbread recipe and, let's sample it next time we have a festival. Laura?
You mentioned before the museum, that was before the museum.
Uh-huh.
How did you, well, I have two questions about
Okay.
that. One is, how did you find the confidence in yourself and your collection to think it could do that, to be booked and rebooked certain places all across the country? And then my second question is, how did you find the two women you mentioned, San Francisco and Seattle, I think? I mean, now we can Google stuff, but how in the world did you find two people that interested and competent and connected to do
You
that?
know, I don't know exactly how I got the confidence because anyway, but I called the University of Ohio and they had a really important textile and fashion and she told me about the people on the West Coast. It was called the Curatrix Group, and they also had a strong textile and fashion business, and so that's kind of how that happened.
Well, maybe their interests gave you more confidence.
Now I had to talk them into it. They didn't believe it, that it was important.
But you knew.
I did. I thought it was important, but I think it was because of all the teaching that I had about the feminine, you know, and I felt like it was tough. I mean, now, you know, everybody's talking about it, but back then, if you were in a dream group, you learned about the feminine, and so that took it to a deeper level. But so not everybody was going to understand that, but most people would remember what their grandmothers had. And I went to Washington, D.C. like 2 or 3 years ago, and I went all over on one of those little open buses,
Yeah.
and they acted like women didn't help do anything. You know, there was nothing in the museums very much. There's probably a little more now. But so it helped me to see that what was happening in Arkansas, talking about women, when we could vote, when, you know, what we have done throughout the decades, that's important for people to see. And lately, men have been leaving us wonderful reviews on our TripAdvisor and that sort of thing. And one woman last week came in with her husband from Louisiana, and he stayed in there, and she was so frustrated with him. He was really enjoying, you know, getting to see what all was in purses. And so I feel like that even as time goes on, I think it's becoming more and more important because it's telling a story that people can understand and a lot of us remember, you know. So.
You know, there's so many of us that, as the days and years go by, we just kind of get rid of stuff, you know? How did you keep your collection going? I mean, have you always had a thought of I need to keep these purses?
I've been a keeper.
Oh.
Just keeper. Yeah. And you know, I've talked to other women who have said that they're thinking their daughters might. Well, their daughters don't want anything that you have necessarily. You know, they want to have their own stuff. So you have to open a museum.
Questions?
The Bernice Garden, the things that are going on there with the plantings. I was there before it got cold, and walking through, and the bees, there were so many bees.
Oh, yeah.
And that was just a beautiful thing to see them buzzing around the plants. Can you tell us a little bit more about the herbs?
Yes, we have. We've made a special effort to. A young man whose name is Thomas Wilkinson has built the things that look like big bathtubs. They're made out of permaculture, and then the Herb Society people have come and helped us grow. Have a nice collection of herbs, and so we're working on having other new things going on this year, new plantings. And then the Soma group has helped us with, they scraped off a lot of the grass, and volunteers came and worked on it, so that was nice. And then we'll be planting things where the dirt is.
So my question is about the backspace. When it was early, I remember you talking about sort of a collaborative, which is, as an entrepreneur, a really forward-thinking way of doing business. The collaborative was between the people that you serve and the institution, the center itself, and how, what you could do for the people that would come, but also the culture that the people who come seeking those services or whatever you're providing would bring. And so it's kind of a two-way street. So
Absolutely.
I'm wondering, how has that evolved since you originally thought of the Esse Center?
It's kind of the same thing that we were talking about before, separating your peas from your cornbread. You know, it's sort of like you have an idea in your head and you think that this is all it's going to be. And then you get someone who has ideas. That Lori has had ideas, you've had ideas. Crystal has lots of ideas that, you know, I would never think of, and I would not think that I would like those ideas necessarily, but I went and I did, and it was just sort of like things evolve, you know, and I would never be just like I would imagine or want to keep it, you know, because I'm a little bad about wanting just to be like this, and life doesn't work that way. Is that what you meant? Okay.
Will your events be on social media, or will you have a Facebook page for your backspace?
Yes, we're
You
working
already-
on that, but Crystal has had surgery, and so we're sort of in the middle of a place that it's not as obvious right
But
now.
eventually you'll have the events.
Yes, yes.
Good question. Do you ever have people donate things or leave things
Yes.
to you?
Yes, it's very nice. That we asked people to send us pictures so that we can kind of see if we have, you know, if we have a need for it, and so they, you know, they donate, and we have an agreement so that they'll understand that it might not ever see the, you know, be in the particular case, but we have 4 different exhibits a year. So we've had swimwear, we've had lingerie, we've had
Girl Scouts.
Girl Scouts, yes, and just all kinds of things, you know. So we usually, I mean, if we think we can use it, we like to accept, yes.
Have you ever had manufacturers like Prada or something like that that might have older vintage items that they want to have displayed in a museum? One of the most prominent ones in the world is, as we talked about here. Have you ever had any kind of outreach like that from the entity that might design the purses?
I don't know that I didn't understand what you were
Like
saying.
if you had like Prada, for example.
Oh, yeah.
That might want to have their purse displayed, a vintage purse displayed in a museum.
Right,
As opposed to going to the Smithsonian that might have
Right.
anything and everything.
right.
They go to you. Have you ever had anything like that?
Not much. Back in the 80s, there were Sharif purses. A lot of ladies will remember Omar Sharif, kind of colorful bags. I had one, and he was the person that was representing that company was very interested in the fact that it was in the museum. The other museums are in Amsterdam and in Seoul, South Korea.
Okay.
And the ones in Amsterdam, I've not been there, but I sell some things that a woman who lives right down the street in Amsterdam that she makes.
Oh.
So I'm very interested in what they do there. They have more name brands than we do. Ours are, you know, logos and name brands weren't as popular until the 90s. You know, they started being popular in the 80s, and then they got bigger and bigger and bigger. And but back in the 60s, I have a purse that's a Gucci that doesn't even have a logo on it. You know, I mean, you just you had to know that it was a Gucci. So it's odd how the things have changed. But the whole point of this museum is not the highest end or the most expensive purse. It's about remembering you know, your grandmother's purse, or I remember that, and I remember how it smelled. You know, it had juicy fruit gum, or you know, or my aunt that smoked. You know, I loved her. You know, that sort of.
Very cool.
I have 2 points. One is, Anita, when talking about the museum, I don't know that you, for some of the people who may be new, don't know that it's also the store, and you do highlight special artisans who make special things.
Yes, yes.
And the second piece is, you did have a special designer whose bag was donated to the museum, or was used a couple years ago.
Right.
That was on the show.
Yes,
Yeah.
Christopher Belt, and he's from Sheridan, Arkansas, and he is in New York City, and he's making his way with handbags. And he has been there, we did a special show for him, and he donated purses for us. Thank you for reminding me. But he was saying Prada, and you know. That
Just
was
as an example, I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know all the.
Well, this one was from Sheridan, and you know, that's kind of, I think, that's really home
That is
grown.
pretty cool.
And so,
Well, are the artisans that you have in the store from Arkansas?
we have a few. There are, I don't have a lot. We've been to the Craft Council show, which is a juried show, and they have artisans from all over the United States. And then we also go to New York, and if there are, and it's fun to go to New York because there are lots of people that are from everywhere and who make beautiful things. We are trying to have more things from Arkansas, but we're trying to find things that we don't sell a huge amount of things. So it's not fair to a person to say we'd like to be the only person to sell your goods. So it's kind of a catch-22. You want to be supportive of people, but you don't want them to, have. Sometimes we'll sell out of things, and then sometimes it'll sit there for a minute. So anyway, it's kind of a hard thing to do. We do sell more jewelry of Arkansas artisans than we do purses.
Do you have a favorite purse?
I'm so over purses.
So I think the store is so fabulous. I encourage you guys, if there's a place that you have like a go-to place to find gifts for, the women in your life, go to Esse First Museum and make sure that you support Anita and make sure that we support her in her endeavors and, all the things that are going on in South on Main. So my last question is, so we're sitting here at the Venture Center in Main Street, right? And we have all things going on from here to the State House Convention Center. And then there's SOMA. Are there any conversations at all about connecting SOMA to this part of Maine? I know. You don't have to. You don't have to talk about the culture.
Let's see.
Well, I kind of asked Anita this question a few weeks ago, and she talked about the culture part, which makes a lot of sense, really.
Okay. She also told me not to get political.
We're not going to get political. She was whispering to you over here.
Okay, so basically, what the feel is from Joe's Bakery down to Edwards right now is kind of where the business area is like a small town. It's locally owned businesses. They're small businesses. They're not chains or anything like that. And the restaurants are locally owned. Bart is in there waiting on you, and Jack is there, and it's nice. And Convention Visitors Bureau really can sell that to a lot of people. People, they write about us in Chicago and in Dallas, and people want to come to our area because it has that flavor. Mm-hmm. And so it's important, I think, for us to kind of keep that way of expressing ourselves. And sometimes it gets a little bit hairy because people also want us to be almost like continual of the same thing. And it's not all the same thing. It's different. And each place has its own personality and its own juiciness or not juiciness or whatever, you know. So it feels like that if we can go on with what we're doing, which is a little funky. It's not quite like Austin, but it is, you know, we do have a little bit going on that way. And I think it makes it fun. Our Mardi Gras parade was hilarious. I mean, it was, we had one horn player and drums, and I mean, it was enough. It was just like, you know, and lots of, I mean, fun floats and little kids walking with her. But, you know, it's good. But that's the flavor. It's not big time. It's just, yeah, small
And they
town.
have bike lanes
Yeah.
and bike racks.
Yes, that's true.
I'm
Yes.
speaking from the bicycle community because we come to the coffee shop down below quite often, and the only place we have to park our bikes is like bring them inside or lock them to a parking meter or a tree. And the bike racks really are very interesting in Selma. It's kind of fun to see all the different ones.
I know that Anita has always said that she's not a historic preservationist, but what's going on in South on Main today is her legacy, and we thank you so much for that. I know she has a very deep mission about what she's doing in South on Main, but if you have not driven around South on Main lately in the neighborhoods in South on Main, you have to see all the things that are happening and all the new homes and the preservation of the old homes. It is phenomenal, and we thank you for it, and we thank you for being here tonight.